Welcome back, Benchwarmers. Another trade deadline has come and gone in the NHL.
That just means we're getting closer to the Stanley Cup playoffs, baby.
And now that we're in the stretch run, we thought it was time to bring back our hockey analyst.
Aaron is here today to give us his top trade deadline deals and how they will make a difference for the playoff push. I'm Corey, deadline watcher.
I'm Brendan, reviewing report cards.
I'm Aaron, Ducks fan coping, and this is our view from the bench.
Before we get started, if you're not already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss any one of the new episodes.
Also, if you could please do us the favor, if you like what you see or hear, please don't forget to smash that like button.
Smash it for us, come on, it's free. It's free for you, it's free for us. Helps out the channel a lot more than you probably think.
Hell yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Well,
we're back. It's nice to be back and doing hockey.
NHL. Yes, we are here. Aaron, thank you again for joining us again. I know we last saw you discussing the Four Nations face-off. That was fun. It didn't end quite the way we were looking for it to end, but that's all right. We made it to the final, and it was a good game, honestly, regardless. So, but we are here to continue our NHL talk. The trade deadline past one was that last week? What, Thursday, Friday, something like that?
Friday
Yep.
at noon on time.
Noon our time. Okay, Pacific time. All right. Well, being that I don't get to pay attention to this as much, and by don't get to, I just mean don't. We thought it would behoove us all, especially the audience, to get someone who really pays attention to this and kind of break down some of the trades that happened this past week. We're obviously not going to cover everything that happened, but we're going to go through 5 of them, and Aaron's going to give his grade on how the receiving team and possibly one of the trading teams did. Corey, where should we start?
Oh, well, let's start with, before we jump into it, Aaron mentioned Ducks coping fans, so let's just talk about it. The Ducks didn't do a whole lot. We don't have to go into detail. They traded Dumoulin, but there was the one part of the Dumoulin thing that you did mention when we were getting ready to record. Do you want to maybe give us a little detail into that, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, with the Ducks team that was looking to improve, they've definitely improved this year, and part of that was by effectively signing players, getting some good moves in the offseason, very small moves, albeit, but they've actually done well to have their players develop, and they've kind of made some room in their lineup. So they were able to trade away Brian Dumoulin, veteran defenseman, and they only acquired him for a 4th-round pick, and they were able to flip him into a 2nd-rounder and a prospect from just this recent draft. So I think it was a player that went just a few picks ahead of where they drafted, so most definitely someone they had their eye on and possibly scouted. So they got to circle back and get the guy they probably wanted in, I believe, in the 3rd round. So that's kind of fun, but in terms of the standings, they're not technically eliminated, but I'm hoping and saying we are not eliminated.
Yeah. It's just math, but really, they kind of are.
It's numbers, they don't lie.
One thing if we had like one team ahead of them and then we were in the playoffs, but there's like 3 or 4 teams ahead of us, and it's also an 8 or 9 gap. So it's a big jump for such overall a young squad to do. But again, meaningful hockey games for the Ducks in March. It's been a long time, so I'll take it. And as you said, improving from 30th overall last year to hopefully 25-24 when it's all said and done. That's a good jump. So something to look forward to.
Most definitely. And more importantly, too, even though they're probably out of it, they could still be spoiler to a lot of these teams trying to make it in. Have a couple more games against St. Louis and Vancouver, and they can maybe take some people down with them if they want to be petty and end the year on a strong note, win some games here. So we'll see how they do.
I like it. Okay, well, let's jump into the trades that we actually are happy about. Or let me see, at least have a lot to talk about. Maybe depending on where you land with this, you're not as happy as others. But let's jump into it. The first trade was JT Miller. Aaron, what's going on here?
Absolutely. So starting off at the top here, JT Miller was playing in Vancouver for a long, long time, and he just got moved to the Rangers, which is actually, I believe, his starting team. He played there way back in the early 2010s here, early mid 2010s. He started as a Ranger, if I'm not mistaken, and it's either he started in New York or with the Lightning, but it was one of his early career teams, and he did pretty well there. Became a much bigger star in the league after coming to Vancouver. But as he became a bigger star, there kind of became issues in the locker room in Vancouver. It seems all the reports indicated, and by reports I mean their own GM, said that it was an untenable situation, which was insane because I really feel like he could have risked souring the market on his own player. He spoke out on how it was just not a good situation in the locker room between him and the other Canucks star, Elias Pettersson.
Maybe he called Nico Harris to ask him for kind of advice on how to handle this, you know.
Well, you're right, Aaron. Like by throwing his own guy under the bus like that, you're kind of ruining and like not helping the value of trading him at that point either. So why even say it while he's actively on the team? Once he's gone out of your locker room, if you want to do as the
True, at least Nico waited for that. You're right.
He must have been really confident that he had this deal in place. I think it ended up being kind of he got lucky on this case, so that way he didn't have to worry about his own words coming back to bite him. Because yeah, they definitely could have ruined a trade if teams were concerned. But in all honesty, it's not that surprising. I think publicly, JT Miller has been much a vocal player. He actually, early in the year, he left on a personal leave for about 10, 12 games. And I think a lot of it had to do with those frustrations in the locker room trying to see. And ironically, I think they've had struggles all year with a lot of their players, including the player I mentioned, Elias Pettersson, who's one of their stars, their young players they really want to build around. I think he improved. He had better numbers when he was gone, and it hasn't really seemed to carry over once he was traded away. But at this point in the year, Vancouver, they're right on the bubble. We mentioned them as being a team fighting for the playoffs, and in this case, they benefited from subtracting a player here. They definitely have at least been able to have that looming controversy, that looming issue in the locker room taken care of, and now it's just a matter of getting the group back together and seeing if they can reorient themselves and get themselves back into the hunt. But ironically, the team they traded. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say sometimes less is more. That makes sense.
It's true. Yeah, I get too many cooks in the kitchen.
Well, I have you. You were right. The first 5.5 years of his career were with New York.
Yep, I thought so. Yep, I remember he was in Tampa as well, but I was almost confident. Yeah, Rangers was his first team, and he's got a little homecoming now. He's going back to New York, and I was gonna say the Rangers are in the same boat. Honestly, they had Stanley Cup aspirations. They were in the conference finals, one of the final four teams in the playoffs last year, and they bottomed out hard this year. Roster's virtually the same.
Yep.
And no one's living up to their expectations.
They had to pay Shesterkin in the goal, and obviously anytime I feel like the goalies get that big contract, it's like they're due for an injury or a bad year, and it's to fruition for them. So they've completely fallen apart, as you said. But overall, now having JT Miller back in there, since we're grading each of these trades that you pick, what is the grade you got for the Rangers getting JT Miller when it's all said and done?
Well, when it was all said and done, they really needed something to change in that locker room. They needed some spark of energy. And like I mentioned earlier, he's a very passionate hockey player. He doesn't like to lose. He's very vocal about it. I think, give him a solid B on this trade. They did have to get up a very young, promising player, Philip Hedl, who just a year or two ago was part of their all-youth line, which was Alexis Lafreniere. Lafreniere. Oh my gosh, I'm mixing him up with the Kings. Lafreniere.
Man, they're hard.
They're everywhere. And speaking of mixing up names, now the Canucks, they also acquired another Pettersson, and they already had another Elias Pettersson in their organization. They have 3 Petterssons on their team currently playing. So you could theoretically have a goal scored from Pettersson, assisted from Pettersson and Pettersson.
Wow.
I find that's fun. That's fun.
That is funny.
That happens. That would be great.
But yeah, so going back to the Rangers, though, yeah, they really needed to change it up in there. And since he's got there, he's been scoring at a pretty good clip. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I know he picked up his pace. He was not doing so hot in Vancouver. It was time for a change all around. So I think both teams benefited from this trade. It'll be hard to see who's actually going to come out victor right away on this, but both teams are still in the playoff hunt. They're only out by a little handful of points each. I think Vancouver's less than 5 out, and the Rangers are about that number as well. So they were both in a similar predicament. They had a need, and they were able to help each other out here. So this is kind of a nice even up trade, I would say. I think probably Vancouver gets away with it as being a better deal long term, just because they got the younger player, more potential. But the Rangers are in a win now mode. They have a lot of an older roster, so this was a necessity trade, I guess you could say. So I'll give him a solid B on this one.
Well, B works. And before we move to the next trade, in 14 games so far with the Rangers, he's got 7 goals, 8 assists for a total of 15 points, which is only 2 goals less than the 40 games he played in Vancouver this year. He had 9 goals in 40 games. So 7 goals in 14, to your point. He's doing all right so far.
He likes it back in New York.
All right. So we're moving on to another one. This is your fun story here, and honestly, you were telling me, and as a person who's not avidly a hockey fan, but a passively one, it kind of made my head spin. Carolina is kind of in weird place, but also in hot water, but also in cold water. Break down this trade. Give us a little bit of background too.
Oh yeah, I mean, looking at Carolina, they were a team that has been, for the past several years, one of the top teams in the league. They've grown a lot of homegrown great players into their lineup. They've been picking up players left and right, a lot of veterans, a lot of superstar names. You can see Brent Burns, who used to be a longtime Shark, go over there. They've picked up players in the trade deadline past. Like last year, they picked up Jake Gensel. He fit in really well with the team. Didn't stay, signed with Tampa. And that's going to become a theme here, is that a lot of players are seemingly not wanting to stay in Carolina. And that's been one of their major problems. They make a big trade earlier in the season, like well out from the deadline, a whole month or so out. They wanted to acquire Mikko Rantanen from the Colorado Avalanche, who's definitely an NHL star. He's a regular 90 to 100 point player, plays with arguably one of the best players in the game, Nathan MacKinnon, and is a huge part of that Colorado team winning a cup in 22. So it's huge that they even moved on from him, but it was clear that he wanted to make equal money or even maybe a little more than MacKinnon. And we're talking 12 plus million here. We're entering McDavid money territory. He was asking for quite a big bag, and the Avalanche, maybe rightly so, or maybe that was the wrong move, but they decided to stand firm and say, if we can't come to a deal, we're going to have to move you, because they still have aspirations to win, and they can't afford to have a player of that caliber leave for nothing. So they made the tough choice to move on from their drafted player that has been a huge part of their team, and traded them to Carolina. And they actually got back a decent return. They got Martin Necas back, who is a younger player. He was a huge part of Carolina's playoff success, and he was looking to be a part of their future too. They just got him signed to a nice long deal, brand new contract, but they saw an opportunity to upgrade here with Rantanen. So I give them props originally. The intent was good. The sentiment there of wanting to improve your team and make a better push into the playoffs. They know that they've got a lot of their players in their prime right now and a good chance to win a cup. However, we'll talk about the second Mikko Rantanen trade later. It didn't quite pan out so good. So in terms of the trade for Colorado's perspective here, I would say that they got a solid B on this trade. They got decent return for Mikko Rantanen. Marty Necas has just kind of slotted in seamlessly. He's done very well. I think he's just about above a point per game or just below, depending on what the last game turned out to. He's scoring at a decent clip. He's playing with Nate MacKinnon. He's seemingly just sliding right into that role that Rantanen left. And that may speak to Nathan MacKinnon's ability to just elevate everybody he plays with. He's a superstar in the league. He was the, huge part of Team Canada going back to that Four Nations tournament. Huge part of that team. And he's definitely probably the only reason why Colorado's still in the hunt for the playoffs, because they had a rough go of it for the little bit there, mostly with their goaltending. They had switched out both their starter and their backup by month 2 of the year. They traded both away and traded their whole net out. So they were not going well for a playoff hopeful.
I was going to say, the fact that Colorado, like you said, is even in there, it's obviously a testament to MacKinnon and making other guys elevate their game. So, and he's continued to do that with Necas coming in there and fitting in.
Exactly. It's been a seamless transition. So I'll give them a B and a retrospective F to Carolina based on what's going to happen later. So we'll get to that on the next Rantanen trade. It's going to be, it's quite the story.
Which is so funny because this is different than something that I'm used to. I'm used to more basketball, football. I mean, even really baseball, but mostly basketball. Football is where crazy kind of trades randomly happen. Mostly basketball, because a lot of football is in the off season. But a lot of times when you acquire somebody, you can't immediately trade them. So for them to kind of get them, have buyer's remorse within like a month and be like, never mind, let's try to switch this up again, it's kind of crazy to me. So,
it's definitely a case of bad asset management here we're looking at.
But also, in a weird way, by them to acknowledge that it didn't work and to getting out of it as soon as possible and not letting it spiral into something else says something to the organization too. Because you think about the Rams, they've had times like that with like the Todd Gurley contract where they're like, oh yeah, he's worth it, and they gave him all the money and they realized this isn't going to work, and instead of letting it go on and on, they just like cut bait, move on, and admit, okay, that didn't work. We're going to make a better decision next time. So I kind of give them credit a little bit in that sense.
Agreed. I mean, the other one I have is like the Cardinals did something similar when they drafted Josh Rosen. With their first pick, not the first pick. I think it was 10th. But they immediately had the first overall pick and said, "Sorry, we're picking another quarterback." Obviously, it's worked out a little bit better with Kyler Murray. So yeah, I get what you're saying. At least if you're gonna move on, if you think you're gonna eventually move on, hurry up and do it now.
tear the Band-Aid off.
Yep. And with the news they got later on, they think they had to make a move. It's just a matter of if they made the right move getting rid of him. And yeah, I being an Angels fan, I know all too well about making moves and then just dying with those moves because you look at Rendon or even Albert Pujols or any of those moves that might have worked for a little bit. You could pretend, and there's only so much you can pretend. Hamilton, yeah. Oh man, yeah.
We don't need to go down that road. We'll save that.
Oh boy, that's another day.
Yeah, that one's wrong. Okay, so Colorado gets a B.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to this next one. Then this is Riley Smith. This is the Rangers. Actually, we talked about the Rangers acquiring JT Miller earlier. This is the Rangers moving off of somebody. Break down this Riley Smith one for us.
Yeah. So Riley Smith really came into his own in the expansion draft with Vegas when they came into the league in 2017. He was one of those original golden misfits on that team that first-year team made it all the way to the Stanley Cup final, and he was a part of the eventual Stanley Cup team in 2023. Okay. So he got to win one in Vegas, and at that point, Vegas has formed a reputation in this league of being very cutthroat. They don't hold on to players past when they think they need to. And he asked for an extension, which was not within their price budget, and they said, well, we can't do that for you. So he was shipped off. He went to free agency. He went in with Pittsburgh, and it immediately did not work. He had a very much of a struggling year last season. So this year around, he comes to the Rangers. They're, like I said, at the start of the year, they were a Stanley Cup hopeful. And so he definitely felt like he could fit in there and kind of rejuvenate his game. But there was just not a fit there. I think he was scratched on certain nights out of the lineup. And he's getting older, but he's not past his window of usefulness, I think, in this league. He's still a very talented forward and can be useful, especially with the team like Vegas, which is why they think they went and circled back. They actually played their favorite game, which is circumventing the salary cap in a certain way.
I was just about to ask that because it's like it's been 2 years since he was there. It's not like he played out a nice 5-year fat contract, and they're just taking him right back.
So he's had, if I'm not mistaken, I think he has salary being retained in this deal.
Of course he does.
Let's see. He has. I think the Rangers are holding on to some of his salary, and the Sharks got in on this as well. So he technically was traded to the Sharks first, where they retained salary on his deal, which is a common trend in the NHL lately, is getting a third team involved. They'll get a draft pick for their time and money. And I think that they're getting a third-round pick. Or let's see, no. Is it? Or salaries? Actually, no. This third-round pick is belonging to the Sharks, so they're giving the Rangers a third-round pick as well as a player, Brendan Brisson, just more of a fill-in depth player for the Rangers. But they're also retaining... The Rangers are going to retain half the salary for Riley Smith. So they make it so he gets his money and he gets to go back to the team that he wanted to go for originally. So he's going to have his cake and eat it too. So
that works out.
That does not happen very often with guys in contract. So he better just be
lucky,
man.
I think he's going to be very happy to be back. The fans seem to be pretty happy to have him there. It's surprising because Vegas usually makes a ton of moves leading into. They've been, like I said, they're a cutthroat team. They make a lot of moves leading into the playoffs, but this time around they haven't done too much. They made a couple other smaller moves, but this is their statement move is that they're gonna circle back on a guy that they know they're very familiar with, has spent most of his career there, and hoping to reignite some chemistry there, maybe with that team. And he's definitely gonna have a different role than he had last time around because they've definitely got other players in there to fulfill the more primary scoring. But he's gonna be looked on for that depth scoring and especially playoff performance. This is the type of player that thrives in the playoffs more so than the regular season, just in those high stakes games. So I'm going to go ahead and give them, looking at this move, they get them a solid B+ because they're able to bring back a player and not have to give up too much. They're giving up a third, and Brisson may be a player that is of some use, but it's also, I think they're going to get a more immediate use out of Riley Smith this season, and that's all they're concerned about. Vegas is every year going for it. They've been every year going for it since they got into the league, and it's a lot of fans think it's unfair. I don't hate on Vegas as much, but
sometimes with them because, like you said, they circumvent the cap and the long-term IR, which I'm a huge fan again. I hate how Tampa does it too. They all Brendan, it's the weirdest thing in hockey. If you're on long-term IR, your salary does not count against the cap as long as you're on long-term IR. And once the playoffs start, the salary cap doesn't exist anymore. So if you come off the long-term injury into the playoffs and now you're technically over the salary cap, it doesn't matter because the playoffs, there is no salary cap anymore. It's like it doesn't exist. It disappears. It's the weirdest thing. I hate it because Tampa and Vegas are two of the most prominent teams.
Vegas. Yep. This year, the Panthers, who we'll talk about later, they're taking advantage of this because Matthew Tkachuk got hurt in the Four Nations tournament, and he's looking to potentially miss all the way into the first round. So,
but it's just crazy because this is the same league that is the most strict with their salary cap.
Exactly. It's a hard cap, but you can manipulate it with these.
You can kind of finagle it however you feel like it.
They're making jobs for the taxmen here,
right?
The Ducks just signed. Was it for Toronto to that deal where there's
they've copied the Ohtani deal?
Never happened in hockey.
Oh, the Ohtani deal, nice.
The NHL people are like, whoa, I don't know about that. It's like, well, stop the long-term IR thing first before
They've always had problems with contracts. They've had a lot of lockouts in this league. They had the crazy 20-year contracts they were doing, where so it was spread out. Yeah. You'd have deals, so guys would sign at like 35 for 20 years, and it's like, oh, you're trying to convince people that, yeah, of course we expect him to play into his 50s. Don't worry about it. That brings his average cap hit down to like nothing because it's spread out over 20 years.
Yeah.
That got banned outright.
Yeah,
I don't blame the lockout years, but everyone's always finding fun ways to circumvent the cap. It's part of the game. The best teams do it, and especially these teams that have superstars because they're pushing up those cap hits and they need to be able to add depth.
As they like to say, they're playing with the rules, but the rules need to be changed. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking into it. I heard after the Vetrano deal went out, I think one other team, I can't remember off the top of my head, there's been one other contract signed in that Ohtani style of deferring all of it to way later. And they're definitely looking into that. I heard that they're going to talk about that for the next collective bargaining. But for now, I mean, it doesn't seem to be as big a problem. Only smaller contracts are being signed to that. There's not that superstar level deal like Ohtani where it's just ludicrous yet in the NHL.
That is crazy. Stupid.
Speaking of, okay, so Ohtani, you're talking about guys changing teams. In that case, Ohtani from big markets and have been there we didn't think he was going to leave the Angels, but he did, unfortunately.
Yep.
The next trade you wanted to talk about, I think, is kind of weird and shocking just to see that guy now not in a particular uniform. So let's go ahead.
Like the one that I was this is the one where I was shocked. I was like, wait, that guy's moving? Okay.
So explain the Brad Marchand deal and whatever went down in Boston.
Absolutely. So the Boston Bruins moved on from their captain and longtime player, Brad Marchand, sending him to their heated rival, the team that's eliminated them
I was going to say,
twice, I think, in a row. Yeah, I think
one of them
twice,
was in
actually.
Boston?
Yep, and they're sending him to the Florida Panthers, the current Stanley Cup champions, the defending Stanley Cup champions. They're just getting that much better, and they're also getting that much more hated, I think, amongst the league because Marchand is not a well-liked player. He fits the Boston Bruins to a T. He's a smaller player. He's actually a really smaller player, but yet he still throws his body around. He hits. He licks players randomly. He's been many times suspended. He's definitely since he's become captain.
You love him on your team, but you hate him on the other team. Like Perry,
I'll say it again. He's the Corey Perry.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
I love that guy. As soon as he was on other teams, I could see why other people. I was like, yeah, he is kind of an agitator.
It's clear as day when you're not.
Totally. I hate him, but man, is he good.
Gotcha.
He's great.
So Florida improves. I mean, Stanley Cup champions adding a great player only makes you better. You mentioned injuries though, so is this like to kind of fill that gap?
I think in the interim, well, he's actually himself hurt at the moment, but he's looking to be back within less than a week.
Okay.
He's definitely towards the end of his career here. He's still been pretty effective. I think he's just under 20 goals, something like 30, 40 points. He's still definitely an effective player, and I think more so than his ability to score, it's just his presence in the locker room. You have a guy that has been around the league for a long, long time. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's been to the finals several times. They've obviously not been able to win again. I think they went back in 13 and 19. Weren't able to get over the hump, but he's been there. He's been to the top of the league here and won a cup. And more importantly, he's been a face of a franchise for so long. So it's a type of personality and character that you just don't see leave ever. Like there's very rare times, and usually it's for a king's ransom to get a player like that out of a market. And they actually didn't do much. It's going to be a conditional second. It's, I believe, contingent on, let's see, I know that when the trade broke, no one even cared about what the contingencies was. It was all just the headline.
It was like,
just insane to see him go. I think it says, so it's a second round pick. It'll become a 2027 or 2028 first round pick if Florida wins 2 rounds in the Stanley Cup playoffs and Marchand plays in at least half the games. So, I mean, I would imagine they're going to get there. So it should be a first round pick, but it's a first round pick years down the road. So for Florida, it's virtually nothing. You don't take anything off of your championship roster. You've just added to it, and they've got a win now mentality. They're looking to repeat. Their big brother down in Florida, the Tampa Bay Lightning, had a back-to-back recently, so they're definitely looking to replicate, keep the cup in Florida again.
No, not only that, if they get there and win again this year, that would be 3 straight final appearances, 2 cups back-to-back, which is exactly what Tampa did.
Opposite of Tampa, because they went 3 straight finals and then back-to-back loss. They would go lose and then back-to-back. Kind of funny.
Wow. Be a 6-year period within like 12 years max of like Florida.
Florida. Yeah. I mean, the South is running hockey right now. It's crazy.
It's not even ice down there.
No kidding. Yeah. They got it figured out, though.
When you're looking at it from Tampa's perspective, I mean, from Florida's perspective, then you're obviously giving them an A by getting Marchand and not having to give up much.
It's huge. It's a huge win. And they benefited from the fact that Florida's become a little bit of a destination team. It's definitely players want to go there. And Marchand pretty much was only really willing to leave Boston if it was to go to a team like a Florida Panthers, you know, a place where he feels confident he can win. And he actually got to play with a lot of those guys at the Four Nation. I know Sam Bennett was talking. I saw he had an interview recently, like I think it was just today, that said they added him to the group chat and he's already chirping all the guys. And they've been heated rivals for a while. They got to play with each other on Team Canada recently and win the Four Nations tournament. And now very quickly they're teammates again. So they've reunited them and Marchand, who just beat Tkachuk from the US here in the tournament, now he's his teammate. So he get from really hating the guy to he's gonna have to love him now because he's gonna be a great fit. And I mean, in all honesty, I could very well see him, regardless of the outcome here, still return to Boston for a retirement year or maybe he plays a couple more there. I wouldn't be surprised to see him come back and wear that captaincy again immediately next year because he's just that's tied into the Bruins. You know,
that's what I want for Perry too. I want Perry to come back and play his last year.
It would be a huge shame if he doesn't. Awesome. Like, if let's say that Edmonton Oilers go on to win the cup this year, he has to come back and sign. It would be a huge disappointment if he didn't. He's finally got what he's been chasing for ever since he left. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. But most definitely for the Florida Panthers here, they've made a great move, and they've made.
So Corey gave it an A. Are you echoing
an A plus? Yeah, it's probably in terms of like the deadline here is probably the best move. It's given up something that it's not even within your window of winning cups here, so you're not worried about it, and it's a depth move. It's not only a depth move and a leadership move, but right? It's a leadership move. But it's also just a good hockey move because he's still a great player. He's still leading a team in Boston that they've struggled this year, especially with injuries, and they've regressed a ton. And Boston basically just sold off almost everybody that had expiring deals, and they've thrown in the towel, even though they're not that far out of it. They've thrown in the towel, it seems, for this year. They're looking to reset, but yeah, they made a big move here, and it's almost a service to Marchand here that they were able to get him to a team to win him another cup, because I'm sure he doesn't like the fact that his previous 2 appearances in the finals were losses. Yeah. So he's definitely going to get at least a good shot at it one more time, if nothing else. So it's good for the one they call the Rat. He's got that nickname, and I find it funny too because the tradition in Florida is throwing rats on the ice, rubber rats on the ice when they win games. That's a long story. That has to do with
Marchand jerseys on the Rats, and then throw them on the floor.
That's perfect. There you go. Yeah, the little Marchand Rats on the ice. So it's definitely a great move for them. They get an A+. And for the Bruins, I don't even know if I really want to rate it. It's such a downward side deal. You're giving up your captain, but you're also doing right by your captain and giving him the chance to win. So I do
give them just a thumbs up.
Good job.
Respect for that move. That takes a lot, especially to give him to a rival like that. So
true. All right, before we move to the last one though, I want to come back. You said he's had 20 goals. You're freaking good at this. He's had 21 this season so far. Yep. 47 total points, 26 assists. So
I figured he's right about that 40-50 point mark. It's still he can still get to 60-70. Super effective player, and you're giving him nothing to get him. So great work by the Panthers there.
Well, we're going to then kind of wrap this one up with tying it back into the Martin trade that we talked about. What's his last name again?
Necas, yes.
Necas. Martin Necas trade that we talked about earlier. Right. This one is kind of touching down to Mikko Rantanen. Kind of finish this off for us.
Well, it's deja vu all over again. He's on the move. He actually set the NHL record to be the only NHL player that played for 3 teams and has 70 points. So it's
Nice.
crazy. I think the previous record, I can't remember if it was Granlund or which player it was, but he only had 68. So the moment he started playing games in Dallas, he already achieved that record of being the only guy,
well then,
prestigious honor of being the only guy to be on 3 separate teams and be that effective of a player. So it's definitely odd to see. But as we mentioned before, Carolina trades for him out of Colorado, and they didn't do their homework so well. He really didn't have much of an interest in playing there. I know they kept him around a little bit. They wanted to see if they could convince him to stay. They talked deals, and good on him at least for being very upfront. He could have been wishy-washy and let them hold on to hope and hold on to him past the deadline, but he was pretty clear once he came. They went back and forth on numbers, and he had no intention of staying in Carolina long term. So their options were to hold on to him, push for the playoffs, push for the cup, and just hope for the best, or move on from him and try and acquire some other assets for him, a player of his value. They got lucky in the sense that they were able to find a team who he was willing to play for to make a deal. He's traded to the Dallas Stars, who are now very much, ever since he got there, I think the odds numbers have gone skyrocketing up for them. They're considered a heavy favorite in the West. The Stars are.
Okay, needle mover. Sometimes the trades are like, you see before the trade, plus 1,200 to win it all. After the trade, plus 1,200 to win it all. You're like, wow, that was great.
In that deal, it's going to be the difference.
This is definitely
not this case in this case, huh? Okay.
This is definitely weighed on the scales heavy. It's a player that's kind of what they've needed for a long time. Another top line winger. So they've had a tandem of Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin in Dallas for over a decade. They've been a great dynamic duo for a long time, but at this point in their careers, they're both getting to the end of their careers. They probably still have another 4 or 5 years, but they're definitely not superstars, and they've been able to draft pretty well. They've got a solid goalie. They've got great defense. Heiskanen, who I mentioned for the Four Nations, he was hurt, couldn't play in that tournament, which really hurt Finland because he's an elite level defenseman, and he'll be back for Dallas.
They weren't winning anyways.
Yep. That's true. It definitely didn't help their case. And,
no, you're right. I'm just messing.
And they have Jason Robertson, young forward as well. He's kind of regressed slightly, but he's still good for, I think probably 30 goals a year is not out of the question. The Stars too have been a team that's been in the conference final several times. They were in the Stanley Cup finals in the bubble year during COVID.
That's right.
Most of their core is the same, and they've just had depth pieces move in and out. They've lost a couple guys like Pavelski who retired, but they've made a huge move here, and they've added to their group someone who will be that playoff performer for them, is what they're hoping. He's already scored a couple goals since he's got there. He's got points. He's been an immediate click fit, so much better than how he fit in Carolina, and that might even be just because he's back in the Central Division, back where he's familiar, playing a lot of the same teams. He's definitely well suited. They might even be playing each other first round potentially.
My gosh,
it's going to be interesting to see. They're definitely, if they want to make it to the conference, either team, Colorado or Dallas, they're going to play each other in the second round at worst. So we'll see how this turns out. It's definitely going to be interesting to see because they've had several heated playoff rivalries in the past. Colorado had to get through Dallas to win their cup. Anytime that Dallas has gone on a deep run, they've had to get through Colorado. It's been a great Central Division rivalry, especially now that the Blackhawks are no longer that big powerhouse in
taking
Central.
over. Yeah.
Their dynasty era is done. You've got, teams like Nashville were good for so long that had a regression year this year. They're out of it. So really I'm not to forget about Winnipeg, because I know they've had such a great year too, but I think most people are expecting the two odds-on favorites to be Dallas and Colorado coming out of the Central. So it's definitely a great move for them. They were able to they gave up potentially 2 first-rounders. Actually, it's a conditional on both. I think it's going to depend on how far they go in the playoffs and kind of how this turns out.
Makes sense.
And they give up Logan Stankoven, who's a very good young player, like just getting started here. He's got a high ceiling. He could definitely be a great NHLer. But herein lies the problem for Carolina, is that they kind of publicly alluded to the fact that this deal to move Rantanen had their full attention all the way through the deadline. And by the time they got it done, they had no more time on the clock. And deadline's closed. And they've gone from a team who wanted to add by improving from a player like Marty Necas, and went to a team without Marty Necas and nothing to show for it. So
And no Mikko
definitely
Rantanen now.
and now no Mikko Rantanen. So they've definitely somehow made their team worse in all of this in the immediate future. Now, like looking to the forward,
So then what
Logan
did that?
Stankoven,
Yeah.
they'll be good. But this year that they're trying to be successful in the playoffs, I don't know that they've done anything to help themselves here.
Yeah, especially as you mentioned, Tampa and Florida like beefing up. Like it's not going to be an easy trek.
Yeah.
And Washington's really good this year
Washington's
too.
great this year. The whole East got better. Toronto made a lot of. I didn't mention any of them here, but they made a lot of good depth moves that are. I mean, they're a team that's a show me and I'll believe it, but they are trying.
Until you said Toronto, I kind of forgot about them. So maybe this is that year where they finally there's the expectations.
That
are
tends
like
to happen, right?
Yeah, where the team's like, all right, well, we've seen this so many times and you guys never do it. So maybe this is the year they can maybe get to a conference final at least, if not anything else, because I know they've gotten to the second round once or twice. But
they've gotten to the second round once, which is crazy.
This would be the time for Toronto if they're going to make the next step where there's not as much expectation because everyone's looking at Florida and Tampa. Maybe this is the year you can kind of sneak your way in there and take a long run. But I know the NHL would love not only to have Toronto, but Austin Matthews making a run to a conference final. If not
it would be a dream come true for them. And if they can have the Oilers do really well in the playoffs too and see an Oilers McDavid versus Matthews final, they would be over the moon. I mean,
we just saw that in the Four Nations tournament.
That would be a rematch. It would literally be a rematch. It would be
obviously not the same teams, but Austin Matthews and
And not only that, we would guarantee a Canadian team winning the cup for the first time.
It would break the curse. That's right. The 30+ year curse now. That
Dude, we're better, bro. It's not our fault. You know what I mean? What do you want from us?
You look at the rosters; they're all Canadian players.
I was about to say, we got Austin Matthews, the American, playing for Canada there, and not making any depth in the playoffs. Yeah, they've been consistently in the playoffs for 8 years and have one series win to show for it. Really, so
I don't know if we read this up. I'm sorry. What did you even give the grade before we move on? What is Mikko Rantanen?
Mikko Rantanen. I mean, I give a solid. Looking at least from Dallas' perspective here, yeah, exactly. They get a solid A here. They've got a player here who. Very clearly, early returns are good. It's going to take a while. They also were able to lock him. I didn't mention this. The reason why they gave up a decent package is because they were able to sign him. They got him to 8 years by $12 million. He's there for the long term now, so he's got a commitment to stay in Dallas. And so even if it doesn't work out this year, they've at least ensured that they can run it back again next year if those guys.
Not just trade him. I mean, why not? Maybe pull Carolina and just acquire trade.
We'll see how many he gets by the end of his career.
Either. He's already got money lined up at this point, so wherever I go,
money's guaranteed. So you can go wherever you need to go now. Although I know players are particular about the income tax. It does make a difference.
Oh yeah,
sure. It does make a difference, which is crazy because you get teams that can sign players for cheaper, basically because they don't have higher income tax or no income tax.
Yep, it happens.
Cap's
it works.
Crazy.
yeah. Taxes are crazy. That's what's great. Why don't you just do away with income tax? To be honest with you, but hey,
let's go.
We're gonna just a whole other rabbit hole here.
I got no complaints.
Let's stick with hockey. So. Cool. No, I mean, wow. I mean, there's a lot of information, dude. But I like it. It's very informative. It kind of gives me like a quick catch up because obviously I don't follow along too closely. But it gives me a nice quick catch up to get, especially the big names like this, like. Brad Marchand, I'd be watching Boston if they had made it, or or I'm going to be watching Florida when they make it. Be like, I thought that guy played for the. No. So I appreciate the time here. It's good. It's good info. Corey, do you have any? I know. Aaron was kind of adding. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I was happy that, as obviously Aaron knows, we work for the Ducks. So anytime the deadline comes on, it's always on TV in the store, and I'm like looking like, did we trade anybody? Are we taking any merch out of the store? But Dumoulin, we didn't have anything.
No Zegers deal yet. I'm a happy man. I get to keep wearing my Zegers jersey here.
I really like that guy. I hope they don't get rid of him.
Yeah,
me too.
But as far as the Ducks are concerned, we did nothing, which I think is good in the long term. We didn't need to do a whole lot. I think we're in a good spot right now. Trade deadline was exciting as always, if not more so than the last couple of years with this Marchand deal, especially coming kind of out of nowhere in a sense. But overall, again, Aaron, appreciate you coming on and giving us all the info and breaking it down because you definitely know what you're talking about, as Brendan mentioned.
Yes,
stats to verify, and he's right on.
I wasn't questioning you. I was more confirming because I knew that you were right. And some of them your questions you asked, but I was like, yeah, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head. Let's give you props where props are due. So we appreciate your time. We appreciate your knowledge. Any final words?
Anytime. No. I mean, I'm just excited to see how these are all going to shake out. I think I'm really excited to see that Colorado Dallas series. I need it to happen because that's going to be something crazy. Yep.
Well,
we'll have to see if who wins that in the end. That'll be the determination on who really got the best out of this.
True, right? A head-to-head matchup doesn't get any cleaner than that. Well, make sure the Benchwarmers guys stick back around. We're going to have Aaron on to talk about these matchups as we get closer to the Stanley Cup. Just before it, we're going to have him on to kind of preview that. Keep me up to date on who I should be picking in my bracket. I know I have Kings trying to lose first, so I'm going to pencil that in now. But besides that, I'm going to need some information. Aaron's going to be back to kind of talk about that stuff with us. Appreciate everybody. Let us know down in the comments. Did your team make any big trades this offseason, or not offseason, this trade deadline, and are you happy with them?
And also, what grade are you giving to some of the trades that we talked about? Maybe you agree with Aaron or not. Let us know on Twitter and Instagram at OVFTB.
Appreciate everybody stopping by. Thank you, as always, Aaron, as well. For seeing these from RV from the Bench, I'm Brendan.
I'm Corey. Like we always say, enjoy the sports until we talk again.
Peace.
This was a Sycamore 4th Studios production.